the hardest part of any budget is figuring out groceries. How do you feed your family a nutritious, healthy, balanced meal without getting bored or breaking the budget? Well, according to Dave Ramsey, the average American family spends over $900 a month just on groceries. They said that it's over $200 a week for the budget-friendly plan. I'm certainly no financial expert, but I wanted to share with you guys some tips and tricks of how we feed our family of 5 on a budget of about $100 a week.
The number one tip I can give you about keeping your grocery bill low is just to meal plan. Super boring, I know. But if you don't take the time to sit down and plan out your meals, you're always going to end up overspending, buying what you never use, or trying to make pancakes exciting for every meal for the last 5 days of the month.
Get your free pancakes. They are delicious. They are nutritious. They are complimentary.
Meal planning is tedious and it does take time, but I promise that it's worth it. Typically, when I meal plan, I know it's going to take me anywhere from 30 minutes to a full hour to create the solid meal plan and grocery lists. And I'm okay with that, because I know as I continue to do it, I'll get better at it. I've done a video before on how I meal plan, and I'll put the link for that in the description. I will say, however, that meal planning is a skill, not a talent, which means that you can learn it and develop it, and it's worth the time that it takes to do so. I used to only plan for a week at a time, and now I do 2 weeks at a time. I know that the more I meal plan, the faster I'll get at it, so I'm not really worried about the time investment. Maybe someday I'll be a total boss and meal plan for a month at a time like my mom used to. Honestly though, if I can make my weekly grocery budget less than half of what the national average is, to me, it's worth it to take the time and to invest and learn how to do this well. You can see here that as I make my meal plan, I'm writing down the grocery list at the same time. I try to go through and estimate with each grocery item as well what my total bill will be based on previous purchases. I can see if I need to adjust or change any of the meals based on if we're going to be over budget during those weeks. So sometimes I have a little bit of extra in the budget and I can plan on buying either a fun snack or maybe stocking up on more meat or something like that. Or maybe I'm already over budget and I need to adjust and maybe do some simpler meals that month. The money that I have left over in our budget, I either set aside for the next 2 weeks of grocery shopping, for eating out, maybe eating takeout, hello, Costco pizza and hot dogs, which are my kids' favorites, or even stocking up on a particular item that's on sale. Like if they have a buy 2-for-1 special on meat, or maybe buying an extra package of meat when it's on sale. And so that way it saves me money in the long run and helps me keep my freezer and pantry stocked to keep my grocery budget as low as possible.
So this is our haul from Costco for the grocery list. Now, there were a couple of things that I had to get for groceries this time that aren't necessarily like groceries I get every single time we go grocery shopping. For instance, the garlic, the ketchup, maple syrup, the coffee. We don't normally get those every single time. So it was a little bit higher in some ways, but also we didn't have to buy other things. And so I had originally estimated that it was going to cost us $132 to get everything. And I was actually pretty close. It was $130. A couple of the big differences was the ground beef was actually quite a bit cheaper, but it's also because I couldn't find the normal ground beef that I like to get. This was the only one I could find. And then this was not on the list, I fully admit, but I am just giving into pregnant mom cravings. And so this is like one of the only things I can eat that doesn't give me heartburn. So definitely went ahead and got some of those anyway, even though they weren't on the list. And a couple things were cheaper than I was expecting them to be. The garlic was cheaper. The maple syrup was cheaper. The ketchup was pretty much what I guessed it would be. I think the butter was a little more expensive. Same with the cheese. The milk was a couple cents more expensive. And I'll buy 2 gallons at a time. And then what I usually do is I will open these up and pour a little bit from each one into a Tupperware and put it in the fridge. And then I put the lids back on and put them in the freezer. So that way we have milk on hand, because I hate running out of milk. It is a huge pet peeve of mine. So I always buy extra and freeze it. But I take a little bit of milk out, like I said beforehand, so it doesn't explode in the freezer. And then we're weird because we buy coffee 2 bags at a time and we mix these 2 together.
Some simple tricks like this with the meat can really help stretch your budget. So yes, it would probably be cheaper to buy a single pound of ground beef for the meal that I needed. However, buying in bulk is much cheaper and helps future me not have to pay for meat with that particular week's budget. The original package was 6.4 pounds of meat. I could package that into 6 1-pound bags and then have a random 4/10, like less than half a pound left over. Or I could portion it into 7 bags that weigh just over 9/10 of a pound. When you're making a meal, you definitely would notice using 6.4 ounces of meat instead of the full 16 ounces, but I really doubt anyone would ever notice only using 14.5 ounces instead of 16. So simple things like that can really help stretch your budget.
So now it's time to do our grocery pickup. And so we already did the grocery pickup at the regular grocery store where we get like the canned goods and stuff like that. And now I'm doing the grocery pickup from the produce company where I get all of like our veggies and produce from, and they do boxes, small boxes and large boxes, and you can get them like as often as you want to, or like up to once a week basically. You can get more than one a week if you wanted a whole bunch, but we just get them about like once every other week, and I'll show you guys what all comes in it when I get home. But it's great because I drive down, it's $35 for a large box, $30 for a small, and you get tons of stuff in it. So I'll show you guys everything that we get when we get home and get it unloaded. So this is our grocery haul from our regular grocery store. I did get a couple of produce items there just because I wasn't sure if I could get them at our regular produce pickup place. So like the potatoes I got, also because they were on sale. So it was the same cost to get them at the grocery store or at the produce place. So I just got them at the grocery store. And the cabbage was on sale, and so were the onions. And I knew I was going to use those, so I just went ahead and got them at the regular grocery store because then it makes it cheaper when I do grocery pickup, because grocery pickup is the greatest thing in the world, especially with little kids. And then there was a couple things that, like, obviously like powdered mustard isn't something that I buy on a super regular basis. It's just when I need it, you know. So that was in there. And then there was these two things are because I forgot that we were hosting a brunch over this meal plan, and one of our groups of friends that are coming over are gluten and dairy free, and they also can't have pork. And so I wanted to make sure that I had stuff for them for brunch. And so there was a couple extra things, like this sausage wasn't originally on the plan, but all of these groceries here I was able to get for $38. This is our produce box that is $35. It's crazy. We have bananas and romaine hearts, 3 of them, 3 big ones, a whole bunch, like giant artichokes. These are huge. There's a bunch of those. We've got peaches, corn on the cob, oranges, a bunch of asparagus, some like mini bell peppers, thing of grapes. There's tomatoes, baby carrots. You can't see it because it's all covered up, but down here at the bottom there's a clamshell with blueberries in it. So, and there's other oranges too, like these are more similar, like a cross between clementines and regular ones apparently. And then like these leaf oranges, they're called 𝐅𝐓𝐂 oranges. They're like pink on the inside, which are really good. They're like a hybrid orange grapefruit, and so I really enjoy those. And a pineapple, like just so much produce for $35, which is crazy. And then lastly, we have our eggs. And so I have all of these and all of these. These were still from the last time I got eggs, so I hadn't used them all up yet. But I needed my carriers because these are like the greatest thing in the world. It just holds them all. They have their own little spot. There's like little bumps on the bottom. And one of these carriers holds 2 dozen eggs. And so I have like just under 4 dozen eggs here, which is so great. And they're like varying sizes, but like, so there's like a normal size, like a large egg. And then some of them are a little bit smaller, but it's fine. Like they're eggs, and I mean, it costs the price of baking for a day. So to me, it's such a great steal. And I'm so thankful that our friend does that. Like, it is such a blessing and she is just such a blessing to us. And they're so pretty. I love, like, part of my, like, daily joy whenever we have eggs, it's just seeing the different colors. Like, look at this pretty green one and the brown with the speckles, and there's some blue ones in there. Like, some of the ones in here were like almost like robin's eggs. Like, they're just so pretty. I love them. I think they're so fun.
Now, I typically have one day a week where I do the majority of my baking. In this case, I am baking a loaf of sandwich bread, 2 batches of scones, 1 regular, 1 cranberry orange, as well as making a large batch of granola. The scones and the sandwich bread I'm making, I'm going to trade with my friend who keeps chickens for some of her farm fresh eggs, and the granola is a way that I can add a little bit more variety into our breakfasts. We typically keep our breakfast pretty simple around our house, and I don't tend to spend money in that particular area. A lot of the baking I do is with sourdough, which is as a personal preference. However, my friend who keeps the chickens doesn't really care too much either way. So usually her sandwich bread does have sourdough discard in it, but it isn't a pure sourdough bread. I add a little pinch of yeast to it to make it fit the timing of my day better. Also, her scones are just a regular recipe for scones. However, I will say that they are hands down the best recipe I've ever had. I used to work in New Zealand, and when I left, at my going away party, the chef that I worked with gave me the recipe book and said, "This is the only scone recipe you'll ever need." I guess this cookbook is the Kiwi version of our Red Plaid Better Homes and Garden cookbook. Either way, it's incredible, and I love these scones. And my friend that keeps eggs loves them too, as does her husband, because he grew up in New Zealand and Australia. So anytime I make a recipe that asks me to cut in the butter, I always use a blender. Because, I mean, honestly, why wouldn't you? It cuts it in instantly, and it does it so fast. You can still use extremely cold butter, which helps make the dough flaky, because the less you're handling the butter, the better. Trust me, use the blender or the food processor next time. Your butter will be crumbed in better, and it'll cut your time to make things in half, honestly. One tip I have too for whenever you're making scones or biscuits or a pie crust, anything you want to rise and be fluffy, you don't want to overmix it, but you also don't want to just mix it and then plop it in the oven. So after the dough starts to come together, I'll flatten it out and fold it in half and flatten and fold again and repeat. So I do 4 total folds.
If you say fold in one more time.
And that way it's kind of like you're creating a miniature lamination effect with the dough, and you'll have much flakier scones, biscuits, and pie crust. Whenever I'm cutting my scones or my biscuits, I always make sure that my cutter is really sharp. So sometimes I'll just use a knife and not even a biscuit cutter. If you don't have a sharp cutter, then instead of cutting through the layers, it smushes them together, and then they won't rise and separate the way they're supposed to. If you do an egg wash, also make sure you don't let it get on the sides or spill off the top at all, because it'll glue the sides together to like the tray that you're baking on via the egg wash. So be careful as you're brushing on those toppings too. One last baking tip I have is with parchment paper. I tear it off, crumple it into a ball, and run it under the faucet for a second. Then I'll shake off the excess water and spread it out, and you can literally put it into basically any pan because it's like saran wrap, and it won't affect the crust on your bread at all. The loaves won't stick to the pan, you don't have to wrestle with the paper for 20 minutes, and it just makes life so much easier. Granola is so simple and easy that every time I make it, I always wonder why I don't make it more often. In fact, as I'm recording this voiceover, we've eaten all of our granola, and I'm sitting here thinking, why haven't I made more already? I rarely make the exact same granola twice, because usually I'm just using up whatever random seeds and nuts we have left over laying around in the pantry, but it's always delicious. My one tip for this is if you're using nuts that are candied, like some of the ones that I have are, make sure you crush them up and add them after the granola is toasted. Same thing for any like dried fruits like cranberries, because if you add them before baking, the sugar in them will burn and your granola is going to taste really bitter. So the total cost for all of our groceries for 2 weeks was $203, and that includes some specialty items and a couple of pantry refills. dinner is usually leftovers in our house, and I only plan meals for lunches. Like I said, I keep breakfast really simple too and never plan that out. For our family of 5 for 2 weeks, plus a brunch meal when we were feeding a couple other families that came over, came out to a total of $2.60 per meal per person. Before you slam me for this being unrealistic because I trade eggs with my friend or we have a produce box that we get our produce from, I want you to take some time and really search around your community for something similar. Check on Facebook groups, ask your mom friends, go to your local farmers markets and see if there's someone you could create an arrangement with. It isn't something that happens overnight. This definitely took a couple years for me to figure out how to get this going smoothly with the eggs and finding the produce box and all that kind of stuff. I made that friendship with a lady that I connected with at the grocery store, and I had a friend of a friend tell us about the produce box. So it's not something that has to be super complicated, but if you take the time to search it out, I bet you could find it. To me, it's worth taking the extra time and creativity and a little extra legwork to figure out how to make things from scratch and keep our grocery bill as low as possible.
I don't claim to be an expert in this area, but I do hope that this video gave you some tips, tricks, and inspiration on how you can stretch your budget without risking boredom when it comes to your groceries. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.